Good morning. My name is Steve Berry. I'm the President and CEO of RCA, and I'd like to welcome everyone to RCA's 19th Annual Convention and Expo. We really appreciate your presence today. Today and tomorrow we're going to focus on squarely on returning and restoring competition to the wireless industry and bringing 4G services to all of America. And when you head home, we're confident that you'll take back an up-to-date overview of our industry, hopefully some great insights on some of our industry's brightest lights, technology, marketing, and customer service, among other things. Hopefully a thorough understanding of our most pressing challenges, including those in Washington, D.C., and a recharged determination to stay involved with RCA as we work together in D.C. and in the global wireless marketplace to keep your companies competitive in a rapidly changing, evolving wireless world. And in short, we want each of you to depart Las Vegas not only having had lots of fun, but knowing that the time you spent here was well spent with RCA, and your colleagues will know that this was a smart investment in your company, in your customers, your employees, your industry, and hopefully also your career. So now a lot of people have contributed to this annual convention and making it a success, and I'd like to acknowledge them at this point in time. First, we'd like to thank those companies who have generously sponsored some of our special events here, and I hope you will take an opportunity to say hello to them. I hope you'll show your appreciation by dropping by the booths and introducing yourselves. Also, a big thank you to the nearly 140 companies in our exhibit hall, which is the pillar of this success of this show. And next, we extend our gratitude to the dozens of RCA members who have served on the events committees in the past year and in this year, and chaired by Hugh Mina, who is the President and CEO of Cellular South. These folks have been giving their time, their brain power, to help us plan and promote this annual Convention and Innovation Expo. And of course, I want to thank RCA staff. What would I do without a great staff? Each of them has stepped up to the plate, and I'm both proud and very appreciative of the work. Please join me in thanking the exhibitors, the sponsors, Hugh Mina, the members of the events committee, and the staff. Thank you. Now, this morning, before we hear from our outstanding keynote speaker, I thought I would, and then we'll present the 2011 Annual Achievement Awards. I thought I'd take a moment and discuss some of the RCA's advocacy work, if I may. And this past year, we've worked diligently to continue educating policymakers on Capitol Hill, the FCC, and the administration, on the issues that are most important to competitive carriers. We have a great professional team, as I said. We're present and vocal every day, everywhere it counts in D.C. And we've launched some programs that hopefully will keep you informed and more involved in the advocacy work itself. All in all, we've had a good year. That actually concluded with a major, in fact, I would say, historically significant victory for you and RCA. It was so much easier to stand here before you when you can deliver some good news. But on April 7th, the FCC voted in favor of an automatic data roaming mandate. This policy change will help generate the consumers and carriers that will have a path, provide them have a pathway to 3G and hopefully 4G services. This issue was addressed in the National Broadband Plan almost a year ago, and RCA has been working diligently with many of our members to make sure that this data roaming mandate came about. So to say we're pleased is really an understatement. The FCC made a major statement by this vote. With a 3-2 vote, Chairman Janikowski, Commissioner Copps, and Commissioner Clyburn, they got this one right, and they deserve a big round of applause. Thank you. This policy decision is pro-jobs. It will spur innovation. It will promote competition in the wireless industry. Consumers will benefit from more competitive marketplace, and carriers will be encouraged to invest in advanced networks. I have no doubt that in a few years we'll look back at the FCC's data roaming decision and wonder why there was ever any hesitation to require competitive connectivity in an IP world. After all, requiring automatic data roaming is the only logical conclusion that you can come to. So yes, this was a great big victory for RCA, and we proved that we're a force to be reckoned with. But the fight is far from over because our opponents will spend millions, literally millions, to keep us from changing policies in Washington, D.C. And folks, make no mistake about it, the smaller competitive carriers, which is you, the RCA carrier members, remain at a critical crossroads as the policymakers make decisions that could either restore and promote the competition in the marketplace or place you at a very serious competitive disadvantage. Now, for the other RC oxygen issues, as I like to say, there are a lot of things that remain on the to-do list, and they relate to interoperability, device exclusivity, spectrum, and USF reform. And interoperability, as you know, is a concept that devices should be required to operate on the new broadband spectrum that should be designed and capable of operating on all paired 700 megahertz spectrum. Actually, data roaming really goes hand in hand with interoperability. And on April 7th, as I say, the same day the FCC voted 3-2 to give us data roaming, the Commission also announced, and I think the Chairman must be calling me now. I'm sorry, we have more important work to do right here. Mr. Chairman, I'll call you back later. Actually, data roaming and interoperability goes hand in hand. And the Commission announced on that same day, they announced a workshop to discuss the impact of interoperability. That, too, was another big win for us. We've been working that for a long time. And I promise you that RCA will be there at the workshop to make sure your voice is heard. But you need to be there also. I invite each of you to join us on April 26th. Come to the FCC. Let them hear about your concerns on interoperability and the spectrum issues. We have to show the FCC that we're concerned and we're serious about this. We're going to tell the commissioners that the lack of interoperability spans across networks and handsets, that it discourages carrier investment, and that it limits consumer choice and device availability to your customers and also to the carriers. And as you know, consumers want smartphones, they want tablets, but many of you can't provide these devices because they're not available. And without interoperable devices, you're at a market disadvantage. But let me add that this is more than just a marketing issue. These devices and these device deals really are tantamount to technology denial. And many of your customers in rural areas will not have access to them. We want to free the 700 megahertz spectrum from the artificial, contrived reasons that allow Verizon and AT&T to have their own private band plans on taxpayer-owned spectrum. Interoperability allows consumers to use the devices they want on a network that best services their needs. And also, according to the CEO of AT&T, interoperability will spur innovation. And if you'll please indulge me in a second, I'd like to play an interview with AT&T Chairman Randall Stephenson immediately following a speech that he gave in Barcelona, Spain in February. And I think we smuggled this out of the country on an iPhone, YouTube download. Well, we would have had there been an interoperable iPhone to do that with. But if you could bear with just a second, we can go to the video clip. Can we put that up, please? It's only about a minute and a half. Are you ready?
Now, how do those changes that are coming and the pace of change that's coming affect the way that all these different players in the industry work and compete with each other?
Well, I think all of us in the industry have a common goal, and that is to make this pie bigger. We want more ubiquitous utilization of mobile broadband capabilities. And to the extent you desire that, history has shown that we have to make all of these networks, we have to make all of these operating systems interoperable. And so to the extent we can get more openness, more seamlessness, more interoperability among network providers, among apps, among OSs and devices, then the bigger we make this pie, and we cause this thing to grow much faster and make it a much more pervasive part of business and society.
And while there's a will, I guess, for these different companies to become more connected, each business still has to make money itself, doesn't it? Still has to seek margin and seek market share for itself. How can you kind of square those two contradictory things?
They're not contradictory at all. In fact, I would challenge you to go back. Text messaging, the most basic of functionality that we have today in the mobile world, you go back to the beginning, that was a walled garden service. And so if you wanted to text message somebody, they had to be on the same network operator as you. What happened when we made that open, when we caused interoperability among network providers? Text messaging exploded around the globe. And in fact, it facilitated companies like Twitter. And if you look at all the apps that are being developed for Apple and so forth, text messaging is an inherent part of those. And so it became a significant business model for all of us by allowing for interoperability. So I think they're very compatible. Make the pie bigger, create interoperability, and it'll cause this thing to grow much faster.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. It's really ironic that AT&T voices the importance of interoperability while in Europe, where they're not the dominant carrier. But here in the United States, well, AT&T is not for interoperability. AT&T and Verizon are not for data roaming. And clearly, AT&T knows that interoperability is the key to promoting competition and therefore opposes the issue here at home in order to maintain a market-dominant position. And another issue I'd like to briefly mention is USF reform. On this front, RCA has got a lot going on. The FCC has issued a notice of proposed rulemaking to restructure USF and create a Connect America Fund and a mobility fund. This policy change could have significant revenue impact on you. In fact, 90% of our members, RCA members, receive some portion of USF support. And we filed comments at the FCC proceeding imposing limitations on funds to the wireless carriers. We've also sued the FCC for going beyond the authority. In other words, the agency that is taking funds away from the wireless carriers and directing those funds for different purposes and creating different funds. These are all issues that are very, very critical to us. Yesterday we filed USF comments, and hopefully you'll go to our website and see our press release and the comments. We oppose the uneven phase-out of support. We oppose the reverse auctions provisions. And we encourage revenue-neutral and technology-neutral solutions. Now, this is an important issue for all of us, and we'll talk more about it in this afternoon's general session. But in total, RCA members receive over $350 million per year in the current USF program. And that is a big issue for all of us to have to watch. Now, this January 25th, the President in the State of the Union said, and I quote, "Within the next 5 years, we will make it possible for business to deploy the next generation of high-speed coverage to 98% of all Americans." Well, RCA enthusiastically applauds President Obama's goal. But Mr. President, your goal will not become a reality unless RCA carriers are a part of your vision. And data roaming and interoperability and successful USF reform are part of the policy changes that are made in Washington, D.C. And with your support, RCA did an economic study that showed 117,000 jobs will be created or saved in 19 states that have less than 90% high-speed broadband penetration. If the FCC moves forward on two decisions, data roaming and interoperability, well, we have the facts and we know that jobs are at stake. So we'd like to get on with it. Another merger is not the answer. We clearly, all of these are important issues, and we'll dig deeper into these in this afternoon's general session with a panelist of experts. Now, each of these policy challenges is important. They're complex, and it has a potential to impact your future. But I haven't discussed one of the most significant challenges to every competitive carrier, and that is the AT&T T-Mobile acquisition. In other words, the big M word is not for merger, it's for monopoly. Actually, adding insult to injury, last December, AT&T proposed to buy up even more 700 megahertz spectrum, nearly $2 billion in the transition with the Qualcomm for the spectrum used for their failed Flow TV. This is a good idea to look at the slide here on spectrum and give you an idea of what a commanding dominant position that AT&T and Verizon holds in these particular spectrum bands. It's very difficult when you look at that to see where there's room for competitive carriers, especially going forward. That transaction with AT&T and Qualcomm is bad for competition and furthered spectrum and competitive consolidation. And accordingly, RCA opposed it. We filed a petition to deny in opposition to that deal. And well, not content with Qualcomm spectrum, last month AT&T focused its appetite on a much larger piece of the pie, a slice of spectrum, and entered into an agreement to acquire Deutsche Telekom's T-Mobile USA unit. Despite the rhetoric and assumptions coming from AT&T, this transaction valued at $39 billion is far from a done deal. It must be approved by the Antitrust Division of the Justice Department and the FCC, which reportedly would take 12 to 18 months. Already there are leaders in Washington, D.C. that are critical. For example, House Telecommunications Subcommittee Chairman Greg Walden said that the deal raises legitimate issues that we should be concerned about. And it seems that if there are fewer and fewer players in the market, there's less and less opportunity for innovation in the wireless market. Well, we agree with Chairman Walden. We need to keep, as he said it, to keep a vibrant, competitive marketplace. And that's why our advocacy relating to AT&T's consolidation binge is so important. Now, if it is approved, what would it mean to RCA carriers? Well, we've been asking that question. We've been asking that question for the past month, and it's hard to quantify the economic impact with precision, but it's pretty safe to say that in its current form, it would not be advantageous to competitive carriers. And if you need proof, let's just take a quick look at recent history. Here's a sort of a graphic depiction of what the marketplace looked like 10 years ago. And as you'll see, there's a fairly healthy ecosystem between and among Tier 1 and Tier 2 carriers, the competitive carriers. And of course, over the past 10 years, AT&T and Verizon have been on a consolidation spree that has put nearly 2/3 of American cell phone subscribers in their deep pockets. Here's what it looks like. And that's over the last 10 years. Now, if this acquisition goes through, AT&T's customer base would grow 35% in a blink of an eye, and exploding it from 96 million to 130 million once the merger is complete. You'll notice down here we got a little love affair going on, and we hope that we don't consummate that marriage if we can help from doing it. In fact, if this deal is given the green light, all carriers combined would not reach the number of customers controlled by either AT&T or Verizon. Here's a Washington Post summary of the market just last year. Give you an idea of the magnitude. We need a national third carrier that wants to be partners and would like to work and restore the national competitive marketplace. But you know what this deal would do and what it would mean, and make no mistake about it, if the result would be higher prices, fewer choices, less innovation, more consolidation, and it would place you at an even greater marketplace disadvantage while putting your customers on the wrong side of the digital divide. A March 28th New York Times editorial summed it up quite well, observing that, as proposed, the acquisition could leave two companies with nearly 80% of the market, and cellular telephony in the United States could become an anti-competitive duopoly. Well, here's a newsflash, New York Times. It's not going to become a duopoly. It already is a duopoly. And folks, please hear me loudly and clearly, that RCA is opposed, absolutely unyieldingly opposed to the AT&T bid to acquire T-Mobile. Because if this goes through, if the powers that be allow this to be rubber stamped, the proposal, this means that everyone will move precariously toward a single monopolistic market if you're a GSM carrier. And that could be the death knell for GSM carriers that are here today, not in the too distant future. Furthermore, this would also likely have a precursor impact for what would be in store for CDMA carriers. This slide sort of shows the dominance of a dominant AT&T Verizon world and what it might look like. I don't want the future to look like that. So clearly we cannot afford to go down this scary, scary road. And so our opposition to AT&T T-Mobile deal should and must be a further reason for every member of RCA and every smaller competitive carrier in the country to rally, to unite, to form a solid, united front as the association challenges AT&T's audacious march toward a more even omnipotent, market-crushing duopoly, that even such a march toward a marketplace will turn into a monopoly, not a duopoly. It could be It took the breaking up of Ma Bell to create the innovation and competition that has brought us to where we are, that allowed you to grow and thrive. Allowing her to be put back together will be the end or the expense of competition, innovation, and economic development and jobs, especially in the rural America. So we say join, fight, unite. So there you have it. We have quite a list of challenges. It's a big, tall order. But as we advance, I can assure you that your board of directors has been and will continue to be resolute in RCA's advocacy priorities. RCA will be the sharp end of the stick at the FCC for you and at Congress and at the White House. And RCA will support policy decisions that allow you and our members, to survive and thrive. And that's what RCA is all about. As we move forward, I can assure you that we have an outstanding team, as I said, and we're working on your behalf in Washington, D.C., educating federal policymakers. Still, I'm glad we have a secret weapon, and as I say, that secret weapon can be more effective than the duopoly's money, and that's you. That's you, our members, the constituents, all those members of Congress, and that they care about. Over 250 carriers and suppliers that care about the wireless marketplace. And ladies and gentlemen, when you consider the challenges before us, RCA's calls to action boils down to just 4 little words. Get involved now, right now. How can you do this? Well, there's sorts of ways. You can recruit new members. We have the Unite to Carrier program, and that's done very well for us this year. But you can get involved in other committees. You can ask about the new Political Action Committee that we formed, the first Political Action Committee that RCA has ever had. We're up and running. We hope you will contribute. And you can participate in advocacy efforts. And if you're a carrier member, you can help our advocacy efforts by participating in RCA's 2011 benchmark survey, which we're launching today. In addition to a report, this report will provide all sorts of useful data, and the benchmarks will give us detailed quantitative information to use on the Hill and the FCC. We represent you, and the data and information helps bring that alive for the policymakers. We also have launched a brand new grassroots website, which will educate and empower you to take action in Washington, D.C. All you have to do is click the RCA takeaction.org, where you'll be able to access information, you'll get our policy positions, you'll easily communicate with your members of Congress, House, and Senate, and you also can get personally involved. You can get personally involved by coming to our Washington Capitol Hill Day on June 22nd. We're going to have a lot of things to discuss with the Hill and the FCC, and you're all invited. Carrier members, associate members, you're all invited, affiliates. Please come, work with us, network with your friends, but also let's bring a message to Washington, D.C. And for additional information, please come by the RCA booth out here. We've got sign-up sheets, got all this information. You can get access to anything that I've talked about. And in closing, when it comes to our advocacy agenda, we have had a pretty good year. We've had a productive year, and I'm proud of those accomplishments. But still, our work is far from done, so I encourage you, please get involved. RCA is here to serve you, and with your help, our board and our board's leadership, I'm confident that we will continue to advance our positions and to win. Our message is loud and clear, and I think I have another important announcement today, that someone else has also heard our call, and they've heard the call to join the fight, and beginning today, Sprint Nextel has joined RCA as an affiliate member. They're going to help us fight for competitive carrier issues in Washington, D.C. Sprint recognizes that RCA is dedicated to fighting for the wireless competitive carriers and dedicated to restoring a competitive wireless marketplace. And as an affiliate member, Sprint will bring expertise and passion to our purpose. So I am pleased to welcome Sprint Nextel to RCA as an RCA associate member. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to our chairman of the board, Mr. Ron Smith. Thank you.